Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Coolidge Corner Theatre. Oh. Thanks so much for coming out this afternoon. My name's Mark Anastasio. I'm the program manager here, and you're all here for a special screening of Blaze, which is just opened today at the Coolidge. So if you enjoy what you see today, tell your friends about it and tell them to come back and see it here. We have a very special guest with us. The director of the film is here. Ethan Hawke, ladies and gentlemen. I want to mention that Ethan's going to be here for a Q&A following the film, so make sure you all stay seated after the film ends and that you've thought of great questions that you want to ask. But now I'd like to turn it over to Ethan Hawke for an introduction.
Hey, guys. We are doing a Q&A, so I won't say too much. You don't have to stay seated. You can go pee. Go pee, come back in, answer your phone, whatever. I won't be offended. Just do what you have to do. I never really know how to intro a movie because you want it to speak for itself, obviously. But I'll give you a little setup, which is that I'm going to try to do this right. Okay, so it's New Year's Eve. It's 2015 going into 16. I've got this friend of mine, my wife's best friend's boyfriend for the last 10, 12, 14 years. I've been following his band. And he has this amazing band in Philadelphia. He's from Arkansas. He's about 6'5". He's a big boy. And the band is almost broke in a big way about 3 different times, only to have it not work out. And he's on my couch, and it's getting pretty late, and he tells me that it's over, that the band broke up, and, there went his life as a musician, that it's over. Because I've been a huge champion of him for the last decade. And I said to him, come on, man, don't get so blue. Remember Blaze Foley? Because this friend of mine, Ben Dickey, had taught me about Blaze Foley. Blaze Foley had written, I had once mistakenly said to Ben, my favorite John Prine song is Clay Pigeons. He's like, no, John Prine didn't write that song. And then he turned me on to Willie and Merle had covered If I Could Only Fly, and Lyle Lovett had done Election Day, and Lucinda Williams had written Drunken Angel. This is all the 10 years before this New Year's Eve. So I'm saying, well, remember Blaze Foley. There's so many artists in the world who are writing, painting, dancing, singing, doing whatever it is they do at a very high level that don't find a place in the world's corporate market. But that doesn't mean that they're to blame. It means the market's to blame, that they have a value. And And you got to keep singing your song, right? And he picked up my guitar, and there's a thing on one of the Outhouse tapes. Blaze did this kind of, for geeks, famous performance in a dive bar that's part of this movie. And one of the intros to the song, and Ben just imitated it right there. And he said, I'll sing you a song if you give me a whiskey for medicinal purposes. We'll have music and we'll save the whales. And he starts playing Clay Pigeons. And I said to him, you should play Blaze Foley in a movie. Now he'd never acted before, but he was this amazing artist. And if you knew him like I knew him, it's a pretty obvious idea. There he was, with his big red beard and his thing. And the drunker I got, the better idea I thought this was. And so I started giving him acting lessons. My wife, who's here tonight, started encouraging me, thinking it was a good idea. We found the rights to this memoir that was by Blaze's wife and called Living in the Woods in a Tree. And she's this amazing mystical person that my wife and I fell in love with. And we really wanted to tell this story. And so this is it. We did the best we could do. And I'll do a Q&A afterwards. And so without further ado, right, I present to you the Boston premiere of Blaze.
What'd you think of Blaze, everybody?
It's funny, before you ask me a question, I have to tell you, in the hallway there, for some strange reason, the whole making of this movie, Dennis Hopper was kind of a spirit animal of mine. Like, I love Dennis Hopper, and I would say to myself, someday I just want to make a movie like Dennis Hopper would, and I kind of did. And in the hallway here is an amazing photo of Dennis Hopper when he was here, which seemed kind of great. And then I asked, what's the story of the photo? And because his expression, he looks very afraid, and apparently he was scared to do the Q&A of Out of the Blue because he was worried the audience was going to hate it and boo him and rip him up and throw tomatoes and stuff. And
it's true.
I felt like I almost burst into tears. I was like, I feel that way. But anyway, here we are.
I just wanted to start by asking you, what were the elements that attracted you to making a film about a relatively unknown artist?
Well, yeah, I always worry when people say relatively unknown, like they're worried they're the only one that doesn't know who he is. You're not. Don't worry. He's definitely not even relatively unknown. He was unknown by all but a very few people. Slowly after his death, things started to happen for him, which is a strange thing to say. And what made me want to do that? You know, almost every biopic you see is about someone who went on to international fame.
Right.
And the subtext of that is telling you that their life is valuable and worthy of telling stories about because they're famous. And invariably, the movies become about the trials of celebrity, which is a little boring to me. And I thought it would be a much more, when the idea of making a movie about Blaze happened, I thought it would be a way to tell a more true story of the artistic experience in life. So most of the artists that I know are met with absolute indifference. And the story of Blaze could be that story of what it means to sing your song into the wind, you know? And I thought that could have value. And to boot, if you do the Ray Charles story, or you do the Johnny Cash, whatever story it is, The Doors, you already know all the music. So you're hearing a reheated version of the music you really like. Whereas with Blaze, because I could teach you about his life at the same time as introduce you to the music, it's wonderful because you're meeting an actor, you're meeting an artist, you're meeting a lot of things at the same time. And I hoped that could have value.
No, it's absolutely exciting to watch a story of a true life that we weren't familiar with. At least I felt that way. Did you guys feel that way? We do have a microphone set here for audience questions, so if you'd like to make your way to that mic.
I love the morning scene in the ballroom. It was Charlie Sexton, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about Ben Dickey not being an actor. Charlie Sexton, is he an actor? Is he a singer? Is he both?
Well, Charlie Sexton plays Townes Van Zandt in the movie, and for those of you who don't know, Charlie is one of the great guitarists of my generation. He plays, he's on tour right now with Dylan. He's an amazing, amazing musician. He has acted a little bit before. I met him on Boyhood. There's a few scenes in Boyhood when my character's kind of getting a divorce, and I have a kind of divorcee roommate. He plays my roommate, and we're both aspiring musicians and stuff. And he and I became fast friends, and I was amazed the way he talks about music and thinks about music is so interesting to me. And the way, I was so shocked to find out that he was taking acting classes in Austin. He was so serious about acting. And I had this little thing in the back of my head, you know, if I ever have a great part for a musician, I'm gonna cast this guy, because he loves acting. You know? Doesn't he do a great job? I think Charlie's
it's a fantastic job. Yes, at the microphone.
Hello, Ethan. So thank you for coming out tonight. I'm sure we all feel that way. I really appreciated how, when you were speaking at the end of the film about the concept of what is art and how is it real and how that's separated from the concept of celebrity, because I think so many people see you can't really be considered an artist if you don't have the celebrity, if you don't have the followers or the money or whatnot. Yeah. So how is it, how do you feel the concept of art and how important it is to society and humanity in itself displayed on this film? Well,
it's such a great question. All of a sudden, I'm wishing I was stoned, because I could answer it so much better than what I'm going to do. But I'll tell you the truth is that I honestly believe this. All right, I don't know if it's true, but I think that music is very, very powerful. And a lot of what Blaze and Townes are singing about is built on the back of a lot of blues musicians that nobody's heard of. You know, some of them people have Blind Willie McTell or Lightnin' Hopkins people have heard of, but they didn't have international fame, you know? And this music is healing. And I think that we don't know why we're born or why we have to die or why we're in outer space. We don't really understand what a galaxy is in relationship to other galaxies. And yet we think we know that Madonna is important and this person isn't. You know what I mean? I just don't think we know very much. Meaning that I think a guy like Blaze Foley's music, there is some collective consciousness. And whether you're doing a play for 12 people in a basement in Istanbul, or whether you're doing it on Broadway, or whether you're doing some little rock show in a nightclub in Boston, it has value. And I think that for whatever we give value to money over and over again. And over again, we're taught that, wow, giving value solely to money destroys the planet, destroys life. We learn that lesson over and over again. And yet, we'll tell somebody that their art isn't of value because they only have 12 followers. As if society has ever worshiped the right things. They never have. And it's so hard. I think when I read in the memoir, when Blaze says in the back of that truck, you know, that the line about, I don't want to be a star, I want to be a legend. Mm-hmm. To me, what that means is I want to be in service of the work. The work will live on. You know, I don't want, did you guys hear that? Okay, good. Okay. Sometimes I think Blaze is saying, you're pretentious. And so I think that if you're asking yourself, are you in service of your art? Life gets really easy. If you're asking yourself, what's it gonna do for me? How come I don't have more followers? How come I don't have more prizes? How come I don't have more shit? Then it's gonna make you miserable no matter how many followers you have. That's my bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did okay for not being stoned.
Thanks, Ethan. It's a very sad movie, and yet there was an enormous amount of Buddha Dharma woven in, and knowing your father-in-law's work very well. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Well, one of the
about
things
suffering and how you portrayed that?
The essence of the blues, yes, thank you, to me, in folk music is spiritual music. You know, I mean, Blaze grew up singing church hymns. That's how he and his sisters would pay their way, right? And I hear in his music, you know, the eyes of the young meet the eyes of the old. What they were thinking will never be told. Wherever I'm going, it's the same place I've been. You know, ain't it a cold, cold world? You know, these are really clear gestures. They're sharp gestures. They're not, it's like to me, it's like a Matisse painting or something, the way his lines work. He has an amazing line. And my favorite, when I was listening, If I Could Only Fly, has one of my favorite lines that I think should be in every like bipolar depression meeting clinic, which is, I feel so good, I feel so bad. I wonder what I ought to do. You know, that's how I feel my whole life. You know, it's like, wait, I felt so good a minute ago. What happened? And it's, so the point is, you're asking about the Dharma and spiritual teaching, and one of the things that's mysterious about guys like Blaze Foley and Townes Van Zandt is they are often obscuring what serious thinkers they are. You know, like, you know, Townes Van Zandt was caught reading Last Temptation of Christ, you know, right before, he finished that right before he wrote the song called Nothing. And it's amazing. These guys are kind of, like a lot of Southern people, there's an affectation of not wanting to, you know, the worst thing you could be is pretentious, right? But there's a lot of really deep thinking going on in there. And I think in the writing, there's a serious spiritual longing. And one of the things that when I fell in love with Blaze, the person, is when you realize this big Arkansas guy who grew up singing gospel music was so in love with this beautiful little Jewish gal with kinky hair that he really tried to convert. I mean, the funny thing is, apparently, if Sybil was here, she just tells the funniest story about it. He got all the books. He was reading all this stuff. He was really serious. Her parents paid for it all. He was really into getting all, like having a teacher. You know, he's getting his Hebrew and everything, but he just couldn't stop eating sausage. And the rabbi said, look, you really gotta give up sausage. And he was like, well, all right, I'll try. And she said to him, do you want to just jump the broom like your parents did? And he's like, yeah, I really do. And so then they just jumped the broom, and we dramatized that moment. But I tried to lace, the whole movie to me is a kind of spiritual seeking. It's a blues song. It's, love and death, love and death.
It really was. And thank you. Not Pentecostal, but namaste.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Hawke.
Hi.
Yeah.
I feel flattered already.
I don't know you enough to call you by your real name, but
You can
we'll
call
get
me
there
Ethan.
eventually.
Ethan's fine.
So with all of your past works, you've spent a lot of time really focusing on the theme of fatherhood. And it was mirrored in Dead Poets Society, in Boyhood. I just wanted to know, there's a definite deeper meaning in this movie in terms of fatherhood. I wanted to know what you had to say about it, how you wanted to portray it.
Chris Christopherson blesses the movie with his little scene. Chris is a little a miracle he's an old lion on the planet to me, and when really thinking. A lot of ways, this movie is really not about Blaze Foley as much as it's about creativity and trying to figure out, why do people self-destruct? One of the answers sometimes you'd often hear about Blaze or about other people like Blaze. His father beat him up. He had a tough time with his father. But then I'd also say, but you can't just be some knee-jerk psychologist, because lots of people get beat up and they don't drink themselves to death and get shot and killed at 39. And they find their, why didn't... And I would really struggle with, I didn't want to avoid answering it, and I didn't want to answer it. And I felt that somewhere in our psychology is mystery, is something that's absolutely unknowable. And I felt like Chris kind of has that. And if I could just get Chris to, and I also think the fear for people who deal with mental illness, I find it very interesting that Blaze Foley, when he met Sybil Rosen, the first time they met, in this little closet that he was hiding in, they were at this little theater troupe, and that really happened, where they hid in a closet and they talked for a while. And she said, how'd you lose 100 pounds? And he said, Thorazine. And she didn't say what's Thorazine or anything. She would tell you she had the warning right away, right? He was pretty newly out of a mental institution, right? And he had a lot of problems with his family. It's really, really hard, and serious, serious problems that he was running away from. But they're not, it's his running away from him. There's the forces that are love in the movie and the forces that are not love. And I think that without a strong father, that's the whole thing about, in a way, I feel about the murder, the accident. I really think it's an accident. It's two drug addicts fighting for the same dad. Blaze is looking for a dad everywhere he went, somebody to give him boundaries and borders. And these two sons basically ran into each other. For those of you that are interested, the young man who shot Blaze was exonerated. He was found not guilty because Blaze had so much drugs and alcohol in his body, and he was so much bigger. Blaze is 6'5", and I think he was 5'6", and so but he dedicated the rest of his life. He went to the seminary, and he dedicated his life to helping the homeless. And it's a kind of interesting story, But I know that fatherhood is a subcurrent of this whole movie, or the absence of it, as hopefully. So I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also, just really quick, my boyfriend and I kept a postcard from the movie theater that we went to see Boyhood in. I wanted to know if you were able to sign it.
Stick around, sure.
We will do that then. Thank you.
Hey.
I feel like it's The Price is Right or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so exciting when you guys go, oh, what's he gonna
Come on down.
for $350?
I don't have that much money, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question, my favorite thing I think about the movie was the sort of discursive structure of it a little bit. The fact that instead of it
Good
being...
word. Good
Thank
word.
you.
Yeah, we're in Boston, baby.
Right, yeah. Instead of being a very linear, like you were talking about a biopic, the Ray Charles story, the Johnny Cash story, it sort of got underneath he's singing a song, and this is why he wrote that song and where that song came from, and it sort of didn't anchor itself in time all the time, which I really appreciated. And I was just curious how much of that came together in editing and how much of it was sort of like fastidiously planned out in writing.
Yeah, the structure of the movie for me, from the get-go, from the first idea of this movie is an idea of intercutting past, present, future. One of the things I don't like about biopics is this idea that anybody knows the truth about anybody's life, or that our lives work in a straight line. This happened and that happened. For me, life feels so much more circular than that. Things go and they come back again. One of my favorite lines is, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood," Tom Robbins line. And and I feel like music gets at that better than anything else. You could listen to Hey Jude, right? When you're 14, you just think it's a cool song, right? You just like it. You sing along, you turn it up, you love it. You fall in love, you play it for your lover. You guys hold hands, you look at each other's eyes, and you're moony-eyed, and you listen to Hey Jude. And the song means so much to you. And now it's all about that person and that love. Then they break your heart. They don't want to see you anymore. Song comes on the radio, you turn it off. 10 years go by, song comes on the radio, and you turn it back on again. And all this and the song is exactly the same. But your relationship, so the idea of telling somebody's life and that happened. Did it? I don't know. I mean, that's what I love about having the dual narrators at the beginning. You know, one guy's telling you he dug the body up, the other guy's looking at him like, that never happened, right? For me, for my brain, as who loves movies about music, it just seemed more honest, you know, of saying, I don't know what happened. She says this happened. And I loved, Sybil's view was the strongest for me because there is something knee-jerk macho about the Texas outlaw country thing with the cowboy hats and everything. But seen from her point of view, the whole thing becomes interesting, you know? And so that structure, it just worked for my brain.
Thank you.
So I'm allergic to plot. I hate plot. It's like every time a show comes on, it's a plot. It's terrible. Life doesn't have a plot.
What you just spoke on reminds me of the line he said when he's asking his dad when they're fishing, is the river the same?
Yeah, right.
And
well, I wrote this movie.
that's
That's the way my brain works.
Yeah, this film is very poetic, and that's what I actually came to ask about, is how the writing process of this film, you know, inspired by this musician and his music, but the lines in the film themselves are their own poetry. And I'm curious.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
I find when I spend a lot of time, don't go away. Yeah, when the music is, when you spend time with Ben Dickey, the actor who plays, but can you guys believe that he never acted before? I mean, he does such a good job. And if he were here tonight talking, you would see exactly why I had the idea of casting him. He's a very poetic, very powerful person. Yeah. And I love the way he speaks. And it was amazing. I've been friends with him for over a decade, and to get to write a part for somebody to, you know, I mean, who else? I remember one of the first times I offered him a cup of coffee, and he said, it's good for the noodle hut, terrible for the spaghetti house. And we're thinking, who the hell is this guy? You know? But I also thought, that's got to go in something, you know? And everything to Ben is a poem. And everything is music. You know, he's just, we had this scene. It was really a beautiful thing. They're doing the scene with the breakup where you can't tell who's breaking up with who, but they're breaking up. Yeah. And Ben, he just, you know, he started crying but his foot won't stop keeping this weird rhythm, you know? And the sound guy's going like, what the hell? What is this? You know? And I go over to him. Finally, I figured out that it's Ben throughout the whole scene, just doing this. And I said, hey, man, you can't tap your foot like that. You know, we can't cut together the shots because it's on everything. He's like, I can't stop. I'm like, okay, dude. It's like, there's just a rhythm to him, always. It's just a rhythm, and he feels it, and he moves with it. And it was really fun to write. Charlie, too, they have amazing, you know, listen to Charlie's, you know, like his monologue about the harmonica, you know? Well, that actually came out of trying to find a harmonica player for the movie. And one day in the thing, he was like, I'm so sick of these harmonica players. And he said that to me, and I was like, that's going in the movie. like who, you know, it's the way they think is extremely poetic like that. Yeah. And so I just tried to harness that energy.
And you did that. The rhythm kept going on even after he's gone. When his friends playing his song. And the rhythm,
that's the whole idea.
The heartbeat keeps going. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Next contestant.
Hi, Ethan. My name is Fernando Lujan. I'm a filmmaker from Mexico, but I study at BC.
Cool.
I'm a junior. And what people are saying about your film being a meditation, like I've been meditating for like 6 months now, and it's completely changed my life. And your film was literally like a meditation for me, and that it was so inspiring. And the scene when they talk about the light lighting up the room just reminded me of when George Harrison died. He lit up the room, literally. And so my question is, I'm just starting out in this business. I'm just starting out with my journey of being a filmmaker, of creating art, of creating something that means something. I wanted to ask you what you've learned from failure and what keeps you going.
What's the Bob Dylan line? There's no success like failure, but failure's no success at all. I mean, that's just the truth of it, you know. You never learn anything. When I did Dead Poets Society, it's such a great experience. The problem is you walk away from it going, you know, I think I'm a genius. you know, like one movie, nailed it. You know what I mean? And then like 7 years go by and I haven't done anything good. You know? And like, what? Well, maybe it was somebody else. You know, meaning I didn't learn anything from it in a lot of ways. In hindsight, I learned things because I saw what it looks and feels like when a machine is working. You know, film is so collaborative that so many parts have to work for the whole thing to work. And I think that for the movies that I did that didn't work, I actually learned a lot more from them. And then that made this realization happen in my brain, which is that if I'm failing, I'm learning, and if I'm succeeding, I'm succeeding. So it's a win-win situation, you know? And so you just gotta put yourself out there. I mean, that's the funny thing. I remember when I wrote a book, right? I was like 25, and it kind of came out that I was going to publish it, and I got a shit ton of negative press, you know? I remember if you're under 16 here, close your ears. The Village Voice gave a review, you know, Ethan Hawke performs the impossible, and you think, oh, that's good. He sucks his own dick, you know? Maybe that's not a good review, you know? And the point is that you realize really quickly that everyone isn't rooting for you. It's not their job to root for you. In fact, it's pretty irritating, you know? And they're rooting for themselves, and they're trying to carve their space. And we're under this mass delusion that we're in competition with each other, you know? And you have to just realize that it is when things aren't going your way, it's when you're being made to be so much stronger. And when they're going your way is the time to be careful. You know, I always think about this, it's like a country like us, you know, when you're so affluent and you have so much to offer, when you bend your mind towards smallness, you know, it hurts, and then you're not prepared for when real challenges show up, you know, and we all in success have to bend our mind to be ready for big challenges, because I'm sure big challenges are coming your way. But, you know, if you love George Harrison, you already won.
Hi, I'm Christian Lewis. I'm Ethan Hawke. I've seen you in films before, many times. By the way, what's the name of the movie actress who plays the role of the woman who's...
In this movie?
Yes.
Alia Shawkat.
Alia Shawkat?
Yeah.
She the one whom I see on the picture there? I've seen on the...
No, that's me.
That's Ethan, and that's Ben Dickey.
Yeah, that's Ben, that's me, and Alia's the female lead of the movie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. She's amazing, and I'll tell you a little something about her. Putting a non-act, a guy who has no experience in the lead, and their love story is the essence of what the movie's built on, and it's her integrity and experience. She's like me. She's been acting since she was a kid, and she's deeply relaxed and deeply confident person. And what happened is exactly what I'd hoped would happen, is that Ben started caring only what Alia thought. Only what she thought. And in that, then like Tom Sawyer or something, he just started trying to impress her. Watch how I'm gonna nail this scene. Watch this. Watch this. I got this shit down. In fact, you can see it. There's the scene in the back of the truck when they're hitchhiking and he tells a joke. And you can tell that she's never heard that, right? I mean, you see her reaction. She's like, hot coffee? Well, I mean, nobody's that good of an actress, right? I mean, she just explodes into laughter. But it was really him just saying, let me do this other joke. Let me do this. I got one that'll rip her up. And he did. So anyway.
Hi. I was just wondering about sort of the intersection, because you wrote the script and you directed the movie and you do act. And I was wondering if those sort of roles you've performed, like, they inform each other? Like, do you think being an actor makes you a better writer, or being a writer makes you a better director?
Absolutely. I really, honestly, this movie in a lot of ways is an example of some, I was made that joke about that bad review, but people get really mad if you don't stay in a lane that they think somebody's allotted you. And it was wonderful to give Ben permission to act, to give Charlie permission. Sybil Rosen plays Sybil's mom in the movie. That's my co-writer. And, the guy who plays her husband is my best friend, the playwright. And I tried to, there's something beautiful about being a mature artist in one form, but forcing yourself to cultivate the attitude of an amateur. Meaning I'm doing this for love, curiosity, and joy. But you still have all the things about life that you've learned. And I think that there was a shaker expression my mom had over the toilet when I was growing up that said, improve in one talent and God will give you more, And it's, I think it is something it helps everybody, I think, to push yourself outside of where it's most easy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to say that Sybil character was an extraordinary woman character in film today. And I just was thrilled by every nuance, every moment she was on this.
Me too.
She was just fabulous.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, and I'm so glad. I wish that Sybil Rosen could be here, or Alia could be here. My favorite Q&As, when we get to be together and you feel that energy, because I do think in the film, you feel Ben and Alia they're formidable, they each have their own integrity. And I really value that. I cannot tell you how much wisdom. Sybil has spent her life working on herself, and her knowledge, even she was my script supervisor. Like, I didn't have a script supervisor. We had no money to make this movie, and she was my script supervisor. And she would sit there helping. She's an actor too, and so she would give Ben these little details about plays. He'd be trying to work on a song, the Moonlight song or something like that, and she'd say, he wrote that. Right, we were sitting under this at my mom's house and the thing, and he actually played it differently. He first wrote it in A. It's like, really? Oh, maybe I'll play it in A. And it gave him these little secrets. And it basically was just blowing confidence. That little scene about confidence came from all of us talking about that mystery. The difference between good and great so often is whether we're at our best, how we're feeling. Do we feel confident? And why is that, damn it? Why can't I control that feeling,
Well, she held her own so beautifully in that relationship. She was present. She was real about it. She
also said goodbye when he was hurting her.
Right.
He started to hurt. His own demons were hurting her. And she tells an amazing story. This will be, I got it. You're so patient with me, you guys. I'm sure this has got to be end. But when they were breaking up, she moved to Austin for him. She moved to Chicago for him. Now all of a sudden he can't take Chicago. They're not nice in Chicago. He wanders back because he's going to play a gig in New Orleans, disappears. Comes back a month later. She tells this amazing story. Sits on her bed and plays If I Could Only Fly for her. right? And he'd just written it, and she knew in that exact moment that this man that she loved had finally arrived as a fully mature artist, that he had written a song that was going to transcend time. She believed it, she knew it, like, she's like, this is what you've been working for. And she loved him, and she also knew that he was breaking up with her. And she said to herself, if he had called it If We Could Only Fly, I would have had hope. But he didn't. But then the mystery is, after he was killed, and she went down to Austin to find out what happened, she found the Outhouse tapes. And in the Outhouse tapes, in the extended versions of them, you can hear, he could say this next song is If I Could Only Fly, if I should have called it If We Could Only Fly. Wow. And it just gutted her. And that's the thing about songs traveling through time. And then all of a sudden we're at Sundance of a premiere of this movie, and Ben gets up and plays If I Could Only Fly, and the song has traveled. It's 30 years now, and it's like hitting more ears, and it's a new song today. It's wild. So thank you for saying that. It's so important to all of us that worked on the movie for that.
We have time for just one more.
One more.
So I'm the winner.
Make it good. No
yes.
pressure.
Okay. Not at all. So I want to go back to the scene at the parents of Cibale. And I want to tell you a tiny story, and I have a question at the end. So whilst watching it, I thought how ridiculous I am, because we have a child, and she's old now, but we keep on calling her Kachkali, which is little duck. And I looked at this and I said, oh my God, that's a huge insight. So did you have any insight of ridiculous thing that you did in your life while you did the movie and while you wrote it?
I'm ridiculous every day. What a little onion, wow. All I keep thinking about is things my father used to call me Beetle Bomper. And I don't know why, but he took me to my first, it's probably why I made this movie. Right? He took me to my first concert, 1976, in the back of a Plymouth, not in the back because we didn't have child seats. I sat right next to him in a Plymouth Barracuda, silver, driving from Fort Worth to Austin, listening to Willie while he called me the Beetle Bomper because I, was a good dashboard drummer. And that's probably why I made this movie. So I really am so grateful for your patience listening to me talk. It's so fun to share the movie. So, if you liked it, tell your friends. If you didn't, don't tell them.
Ethan Hawke, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.